Hey, hi everybody. I'm going to come to you from indoors today. It's raining outside, which we're really grateful for. But just by way of change, we're talking today about the journey of Jesus to the cross. He confronted a number of individual people, a number of crowds, each of them having some measure of trying to get back at him. There was the crowd that supported him, and then there was the crowd of the Pharisees and the Sadducees who really detested Jesus. They detested his teaching, they detested what he stood for, and they detested the fact that Jesus' message was so powerful, followed by signs and wonders and miracles, that many of the people had chosen to follow him instead. And so the scribes and the Sadducees and the people of the law were trying really hard to get him. And they ultimately would love to have just killed him, and ultimately they did. But it's interesting here that they come with different questions over the course of the next couple of days. We might just look at some of those questions if we have the time. But the one question is the first one, and this is the one that came to them all about the keeping of Caesar's law. This is what it says. Later, they sent some of the Pharisees and Herodians. Herodians were sellouts. They lived under Roman law, and yet they tried to follow Jewish practices, and the Jewish people saw them as real sellouts. They took money from the Jews and they shared it with the Romans. They were not popular people. They came to him and said, "Teacher, we know you are a man of integrity. You aren't swayed by men because you pay no attention to who they are." The laws of men, Jesus pays not much attention to who they are. But instead, you teach the way of God in accordance with the truth. What is the way of God? The way of God is simplicity and loving one another, serving God, and being all the things that God wants you to be an agent of His on this planet. Should we pay taxes to Caesar or not? But Jesus knew their hypocrisy, a bunch of hypocrites. "Why are you trying to trap me?" he asked. "Bring me a denarius and let me look at it." They brought him a coin, and he asked them, "Whose portrait is that inscription?" "Caesar's," they replied. Then Jesus said to them, and here's the well-known verse that often gets misquoted because they don't understand the context of what we've just read. "Give to Caesar what is Caesar, and to God what is God." And they were amazed at him. Now, the first thing we need to notice here is that Jesus is not saying, go against the laws unnecessarily. But he is saying this, that those are the laws of human beings. There is a law of God that is of a higher level than the laws of man. And this is the law of God that sometimes contravenes the laws of men. And Jesus said, you better follow the law of God. Don't break those rules, because those are the ones that count. But here's an interesting thing even further. The law of the Romans, which was the law of the land, this was how you were meant to live and conduct yourself, pay your taxes, and obey that law, was the lowest level of law that existed at the time. It was a foreign nation trying to lord it over the Jewish people, and Jesus did not have much time for their law. But the laws that Jesus went out against were the laws of the scribes and the Pharisees. These were the laws that were religious by nature. These were the laws that came out of the Old Testament. They were meant to be so good. They were God's protection for the people. But the scribes and the Pharisees and the leaders of the religious law took those things to an umpteenth degree and turned what was meant to be the 10 Commandments into 1,000 other laws. And they made the law toxic to the people. And Jesus declared war on these people. He didn't care too much about the law of the Romans. That was man's laws, and Jesus didn't have that much regard for them, although he says, keep them the best that you can. But his challenge was to the religious leaders of the day. And so Jesus went after them as much as they went after him. And Jesus called them whitewashed sepulchres. He said, you're like dead men's bones. He really hammered them. He went in their face to break the laws, sometimes to make a point. They got uptight about people, picking up grain on the Sabbath day. And Jesus said to them, the laws are made for man, not man for the laws. He kind of stood against those religious things. You see, God has his own laws, and they're very simple. Love your neighbor as you love yourself. Do everything you can to be the light of the world and the salt of the earth, even sometimes if it means you have to kind of go against some of those, certainly the religious laws anyway. And so when we look at the church around the world today, and I know that their ideal was good and the intention was good, but man, we got a little out of hand. We have so many religious laws that are just sneaking into the church and inhibiting people and stopping the freedom for people that God so wants for them to have. Let's look for the big principles. Let's look for the ones, not the issues of preference, but the issues of priority and the issues of what God would want for us to do. Preference is one thing, priority, however, is another. And so let's have a look at those things. If the religious system of the day is inhibiting your spiritual life, dump it. What could have been or should have been intended for good has turned miserable and can lead you into a bad place. You've got to work that out. You've got to ask the right questions to the right people. Makes a great study as to say which are the laws of God that are legitimate. I guarantee they're the big ones, the big principles. Big principles, love your neighbor, faith, hope, and love. Those are the big ones. They trump the little ones completely. Think about that today. But have a good day. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye-bye.